Hi, listeners. Welcome to the She Speaks Life podcast, a weekly encouragement where we share our God stories. I'm your host, Jayme Elizabeth, and I am so glad you are spending time with us today to listen. Hi, friend. Welcome back to She Speaks Life podcast. I have with me Holly Mutlu today, sharing her story of how God got her through depression and anxiety after tragically suffering a stillborn birth of her daughter. After all of that, God had put it on her heart to write a book of all things about joy. It's called Joy is My Jam. She is a speaker and a Christian rapper. Yes, rapper. And she has inspired me more than she knows. Holly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jayme. I'm so excited to be here. And I appreciate your kind words. I laugh. You're like, oh, you've just inspired me so much. And your courage. And I was like, I don't know if it's courage as much as it is just being crazy. Just daring to be different.
I get that, but I love watching your journey on Instagram. I don't know how I found you, but oh my gosh, you make me stop the scroll and go, this woman is out there rapping about Jesus. I mean, how cool is that? And
crazy?
I'm going, if she can do that, then I can do this. So I know a lot of women are feeling the same way when they see you say yes to what God had put in your heart, because you could have easily, patted that down and said, nope, I'm not doing that. Yeah. That's a little too much. But
yeah,
I wanted to ask you before we get into your whole God story. Now, was this something just out of the blue, God put rapping on your heart, or have you always been interested in rap?
Okay. I've always loved music, period. So music has just always been a part of me. I can't remember not loving music. I've served in every capacity of ministry. Worship was always a wonderful, just near and dear to my heart. But, after getting into different roles, pastoring, things like that, there's areas that you pull away from. So there was a season that I wasn't leading worship, and but music has always been just ingrained in me. And it wasn't like, hey, I want to be a rapper. I will say, I loved me some rap back in, I turned 50 in a couple of months. So back in the 80s when rap first came out, it was I was all about it. So then when we had Christian rap, that was so cool. But when I wrote my book, Joy is My Jam, I was like, I'm just crazy, daring, and love to be different anyway. So I was like, oh, this will be fun. So my book cover is me in a pair of MC Hammer pants with a boombox. And so when it came time to do a promo video for the book, instead of doing the normal, okay, let's sit down and talk about the book, I was like, I think we should write a rap. I think it would be cool to do a rap. So I have some friends that are Christian rappers. And so I messaged one of them and I was like, listen, brother, I need your help on this. And these guys, they're kids. They're my kids' age. Right. So I'm messaging, I'm like, hey, listen, brother, I need your help on this. I want to write a rap. And I said, I've got one line. I'm an ordinary white-skinned middle-aged mom, and I'm about to drop this lyrical bomb. And he just was shaking his head and he's like, oh, okay, whatever. So, but he wrote the rap. I wrote that one line. He wrote the rap. And then I somehow ended up doing a benefit concert for recovery. I'm in this green room with all these young people that are Christian artists that are phenomenal. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm a speaker and an author. I am not a rapper. What am I doing here? But when everything first came out, the rap, the book, everything was in November, December, they had contacted me for this event in June. And I was riding this emotional high going, yeah, I'll be there. Well, then June shows up and I'm like, what was I thinking? But I went out there, I sang my song. I did Joy. The song was called Joy is My Jam. And Reggie, the gentleman that had wrote the song was in the audience that night. And afterwards, he's like, Miss Holly, yo, we got to do an album. But like, I want you to write the whole thing. I want you to be a part of the whole process. And I'm thinking he's just like, okay, whatever, just being nice. And he's like, give me a couple months. I'm going to follow up with you. And he did. And then we wrote and recorded an album. And then COVID happened. So I was like, had this big year that I was all stoked
Uh-huh.
about. And then COVID happened, which we all know everything shut down. So the album was well received, but I didn't get to go out and do lots of things. But I actually am in the studio now finalizing a new project that comes out in the next couple of months. So I'm super excited. So it was kind of like a fluke,
Oh, so
really, as it
cool.
was just like when the song came out for the book, that was just as popular as the book. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's something to this. But I don't think
Oh,
people
yeah.
expect like a almost 50-year-old. At the time I was 48, I think 47, 48. Um, you know, mom from the
Yeah.
suburbs who's, just a mom. Well, I'm a grandma too, to be, hey, I'm going to be a hip hop artist now, like a Christian hip hop artist.
Yeah.
It's just unexpected. So when people ask me what I do, I'm like, at what point do I tell them? Do I just do the I'm a speaker and an
Yeah.
author, or do I throw in a
Right.
yo, I'm a rapper too?
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Make the jaw drop. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I know. That's what like I love about you. And I specifically remember you going around, I think it was a mall, and
Yes.
you were probably with Reggie,
I
right?
was with Reggie. Yeah.
Yeah. And you go, so listen to this rap. And so people will listen to it. And then you go, do you think that this would be me? Do you know that this was me? Or whatever you said, right?
Yeah.
To make them think like, oh no, that's not you. Or they'll be
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that's you. And I just loved
Yeah.
looking at their faces. That was the best video.
We had so much fun doing that. We got kicked out of the mall eventually, but we had a blast. We had a blast. I mean, it was kind of like, hey, we're here representing the artist. So it wasn't like we were lying because I was the artist, but hey, what do you think
Yeah.
about the song? Give us a rating on 1 to 10. And then Reggie would be like, well, what would you say if it was her? And so that was just a blast. That
Right.
was a blast. And it's fun
Ugh,
to do that now because I mean, I'll go places and people will be like, okay, you're a rapper. Okay. And so, but
yeah.
it's funny because I think the bar's set kind of low because they know how old I am. And so I think that I get more credit for being better than what I actually am just because I'm older. I don't know.
Well, no, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I love it. And so I know in order to experience joy, there
Hmm.
we got to go through pain. And
Yeah.
I'm referring to just with my own experience in life, but I've been reading your book and you had said those same words, and I think a lot of people can say that also, that that's when we really, because it's a gift, it's not based off our circumstances.
Right.
And so, take us back 23 years ago when you went through that tragic event of losing your daughter, because I'm really believing that, and you may say this too, is that you have experienced this joy from that and
Hmm.
writing this book and rapping and doing all these things. I think it really is an importance to you because you went through such suffering and such
Hmm.
grieving pain. And
Yeah.
so I just want you to take me and the listener through what it was like 23 years ago and how you felt God holding your hand through the aftermath of that.
I first want to say that I wouldn't be on this journey and where I'm at today had we not had Mia. Mia was our stillborn daughter. Um, and I say she never breathed a breath of air outside of my womb. However, her life has impacted thousands. And if God can
Yeah.
do that with a little girl that never took a breath of air outside of the womb, what can he do with your life? Because he can do so much more than what we could ever ask think or imagine, as the word tells us. And so, but I remember my husband and I had a miscarriage, and so that was devastating. And then we experienced all of a sudden this joy of, okay, we're going to have another baby. Okay, let's and and you get past that 12-week mark, and it's like, okay, we're good. And unexpectedly, out of nowhere, I was it was a snowstorm in the middle of January here in Ohio. I had a doctor's appointment on a Tuesday. It stormed. My car got stuck in the drive. I couldn't get out, so I called and rescheduled for Thursday. And it was just a normal routine doctor's appointment. And then Thursday came and there was another storm. So I still couldn't get out. And then on Friday, and so we rescheduled it for the following week. And then on Friday, I started experiencing some weird spotting, and something in me just said, this isn't right. And my doctors went ahead and they just sent me, this is before there was any kick counts, right? So like, and I'm at this point, I'm almost 7 months pregnant, and I went to the emergency room. They, checked for the heartbeat. They did an ultrasound. I've got nothing. Like, they're not telling me any information. And then a nurse comes in sobbing, and poor thing. Like, at that point, she just found out her brother-in-law was dying of cancer. And she came in to tell me that my daughter was gone. And I remember sitting there
Oh,
and just being numb.
yeah.
And at that point, feeling more sorry for her, because here she was having to deliver the news to me about my daughter as she's struggling with this devastating news for her brother-in-law. And I think it was easier for me to think about her than it was for myself to think about myself and what I was processing. And I remember her telling
Wow.
me, listen, you're gonna have to go through labor and delivery. You're gonna want to get pictures taken of her. You're gonna want to hold her. And I remember sitting there thinking, ew, gross, like, in my
Mhm.
mind. Fast
Right.
forward, and my doctors went ahead and induced me, and I went through labor. And after we had her, I then understood why they were like, you're going to want to hold her. Um, and experiencing that, and just, I remember it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just called my doctor. My father-in-law was an OBGYN, so he was friends with my doctor. And so I kind of had special privileges, if you will. So it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I just want to go home. And at the time, I didn't realize it was anxiety, but I was ridden with anxiety, and I'd never struggled
Yeah.
with it before. And I was just like, I just want to go home. I just want to get home. And so they released me at 2 o'clock in the morning and let me go home. And we never talked about anxiety or depression in the church, right? Like, we're talking, this is 23 years ago. You
Right.
just
Yeah.
didn't talk about that stuff. If you did,
Mhm.
it was kind of like, well, your faith, it was just very, it wasn't what it is today, thank God.
Yeah, it was more of a judgmental
Mhm.
mentality, right? Of like, "You're not praying enough, you're not having faith enough," that type of
Mhm.
thing, and so people were ashamed to be
Oh, yes.
forefront with it.
And
Yeah.
so it was almost like if you struggled with anxiety and depression, you were a horrible Christian, is almost the way it made you feel. And so
Right.
I secretly and privately struggled with anxiety. I never told anyone. My husband knew. My sister, one or two of my sisters knew. I come from a big family, so I didn't really even tell all of them. We had a funeral. We did all those things, but at the end of the day, we came home and life was supposed to be normal, but I there was no normalcy. Like, my milk came in. I wasn't prepared for my milk to come in. Nobody told me your milk's going to come in. I mean, little things like that.
Right.
So I wake up in the middle of the night
Right.
and I'm drenched and I'm like, what is going on? I'm sobbing nonstop, crying just. And the anxiety became so paralyzing that I couldn't drive. I wouldn't leave my house except for to go to church on Sundays, to put up a front that, and it wasn't, here's the thing, is it wasn't my church's fault. It wasn't that they were being judgmental. It was that the enemy had convinced me that there was shame, and that I was the only one that felt this way, and that nobody else deals with this, and that you're less of a Christian. And here I am, I'm in leadership. of the church, and I shouldn't be dealing with this. And so there was just so much condemnation and so much that was attached to that. The enemy had convinced me, and I bought every lie hook, line, and sinker, which only isolated me more. And
Right.
so it just became this battle that I struggled with literally for 11 months. And I didn't tell anyone. I remember standing in front of the church singing and dropping my microphone. And I was the only person, I was doing like the special back when we did
Yeah.
like tracks, right? And so I was doing the
Yeah.
special, and I literally dropped my microphone in the middle of the song, had a panic attack, and just walked right out. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I went to the emergency room convinced I was having a heart attack. And they're like, no, it's anxiety. And I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, I'm having a heart attack and not knowing. And finally, after 11 months, I was like, I need help.
Yeah.
And so I found an awesome counselor. But like, there are things like my arms literally ached, and I couldn't figure out, why do my arms hurt? And it was because here I am, my body as a woman, as a mother, I was anticipating giving birth to life. And instead, I received death. And in my mind, my body, it was like my body knew I was missing something, and my arms literally ached. And this is before the internet, right? And so we were talking earlier just about the support groups that they have now, and the organizations and the communities online that you can find. There was none of that. The internet wasn't even around at the time. And so
Right.
I remember going through the yellow pages, just like flipping, trying to find some sort of grief support, and calling an 800 number. And they were like,
Mhm.
you need to get a doll or a dog, and you need to hold it.
Mm.
And I'm like, you're in my mind, I'm thinking, you're crazy.
Mhm.
Like, I ended up getting a dog, and it helped.
Yeah.
but, literally my body was anticipating holding something, and it was empty.
Yeah.
And I feel like that physically was how I was emotionally. It was how I was spiritually. Like, there was so much anticipation, but I was so empty, and I couldn't acknowledge and begin to heal until I allowed myself to feel. And so I had spent all this time stuffing all my emotions and trying to ignore everything, because if I just ignored it, then it would just go away. Little did I know it would just became more of a time bomb. And I found an amazing counselor, that it was amazing. And she just helped walk me through healing and trauma and things that I didn't even know that I was dealing with. And it was like, Mia was the greatest gift I was ever given. She literally changed my life for the better. And, I'm going to cry. There are times where people talk about National Daughters Day, and I think to myself, what would this be like, had she been here? And then I go back to, I do have a daughter. I just get to see her on the other side of eternity, and she gets to
That's right.
skip this whole mess, right? That we we
Right.
have here. And
Yeah.
this time here it is a gift. It is a blessing, and but I feel like, um, in the midst of all of this mess, she was an amazing gift that I was not expecting. And I always say God's greatest gifts do not come wrapped up in a bow. It's almost like they come via UPS, that has been a box that's been thrown around and misplaced and all these things. And it shows up, and you're like, what in the world is this? This is supposed to be a gift, but it's like all messed up and dented. And it's not until you unpack it and unwrap it and get to the very core, and you go, oh my goodness, this is so much more precious than what the box indicates. And so I feel
Yeah.
like life circumstances, things land on our front porch in a beaten up box that just looks like it's junk. But when you begin to unpack it and open it up, you can see the beauty, and find the beauty. And God truly does. He gives us beauty for ashes.
Yeah.
And she's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. And we do have, my husband and I did go on to have two more children. We have two boys, that we had together, and I have two stepsons, so I have four boys, total. But Mia was just she was an amazing gift that I can't wait to meet on the other side of eternity. But um, on this side, she has, again, like I said before, made an impact that I never, ever, ever could have anticipated. And I think people ask why me a lot, and I learned to ask what now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is an incredible journey that you went on. And, turning into what you were saying, ashes to beauty. I mean, for sure. And, panic attacks are not foreign to me. I had a mom who suffered for many
Mm,
years of panic attacks. So as a child witnessing that with her, like she'd be driving on the road and
mhm,
having one and being a little girl helpless going, "Oh my goodness." Like, I don't know. I just remember going, "I cannot drive. I wish I could drive or I would drive
mhm.
right now to the hospital." And
Aw.
it was the same thing with her feeling like it was a heart attack every time. So, I've witnessed that. I haven't experienced that, but I've witnessed that, and that's a scary thing. And to get through, I mean, I just love how God has shown you like the beauty out of this horrific event that happened to you. And so I
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing all of this. What do you feel like when you're going through, you said you saw a therapist? What are maybe some other things that helped you get through that pain and depression time?
Music, worship music. When we take the focus off of ourselves and get lost in the presence of God. I always say joy isn't the absence of pain, but it's the presence of God.
Yeah.
And to be able to, it's not like numbing yourself. That's still that pain is still there, but it's almost like it's just being able to focus in on the one who is the answer to all of the
Yeah.
pain.
Mhm. Right.
And you know, I say joy and pain, the old Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, said joy and pain go together like sunshine and rain. And um, joy and pain can't live in the same room, but they can live under the same roof. And some days it might feel like you're standing in the middle of the doorway. And one way you lean one way and you're in the room of pain. But if you lean just a little bit the other way, you're in the room with joy. But it's like you got one foot in each doorway. It just kind of depends on which way you lean. And sometimes we have to lean into the pain because, again, in order to heal it, we have to feel it. But sometimes we've got to lean into the joy too, because if we're not careful, it's just as easy to get lost in the pain as it is to try to numb it, and to have that pain just kind of suck you in and get lost in a dark room. And you need, like, the therapist, the music, the people that you surround yourself, they help pull you out of that room into the light. And but music is just a phenomenal weapon. It's a
Yeah.
phenomenal weapon that we can use against darkness and the enemy, and to bring that sense of hope and joy. And when I did my album for my first hip hop album, it's called Joy Is My Jam, the soundtrack, because each song is based on a chapter of the book. And there's a song, if anybody right now is struggling with, in the midst of something that is difficult, I want you to go to listen to the song called The Glass. Because what we did was, when I wrote that song, we walked back to the things in that moment that I felt in the darkness. And there was that time that I was sitting in the room, and this is before we had bottled water. Like, all of our water was from tap. And I don't want to feel pain. I want to talk about joy all the time. Just give me the adventures, and makes sense why I would stuff it all down, right?
That's right. I forgot. Like, what was that time like when we did not have bottled water?
I
That is so
know.
funny you brought that up.
Yeah. Like, so I'm sitting there at the table, and I'm not a why me kind of person, but I remember sitting at the table looking, and I'm like in the room by myself, and I'm like, Lord, like I'm not a half glass full or half empty. I guess I'm not a half empty kind of person. I'm an upbeat person. I know that you're going to make a way out of this, and I'm just trying to see. I'm trying to see how you're going to do this, because right now I'm so stuck in my pain that I can't see beyond it. Like I can't see past it. And I remember looking over, and on this table was a glass of water that was half full. And I'm like, God, I'm a half full kind of girl, but I can't seem to see the half full. Like right now, it's really, really feeling half empty. And it was like the Holy Spirit spoke to me and was like, that glass is not half full or half empty, it's overflowing. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit was like, the water is what you think is filling up that glass. Just because you see the water, you think that's what's filling it. But actually, that glass is overflowing with air. And I'm the air that you breathe. I am what you need. So if you were to fill that glass with water, with what you think you need, you're getting less of me. And this glass is overflowing. It's not empty. It's not half empty. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And so there was just this moment that it just all of a sudden it clicked. And but I wrote this song called The Glass, and it to me, I think it might always be one of my favorites, because it is the raw emotion of, God, you said you're my healer. Where's my healing? Like, where is it? Because I've been waiting. I've been waiting for a really, really long time, and I'm not seeing it. And so there's those moments where God is not just God to me, He is my Father. And I had to get real with Him. And so having those conversations of, God, I don't see your hand in this. I don't see, like, you're the giver of life, you know? But then the word also says He gives and He takes away. And so it's really like I navigated through the word, I navigated through who God is. But then on the other side of it, I got to know Him so much more deeper and intimately, that then it became, I'm going to trust you with whatever you throw at me, whatever
Right.
comes my
Yeah.
way, whatever you allow. So when something like, hey, I want you to rap, that's a no-brainer. Okay, Lord, like I'll make a fool of myself. I don't care. I want you to write a
Yeah.
book. Okay, I'll do that. Like those things seem so simple to me. And I look at it and go, the outcome is not what I'm focused on. My focus is not the outcome. My focus is simply being obedient to my Father and allowing Him to determine the outcome. And so any of the things that I do, whether it's rapping or writing a book or anything that I go through, for me, it's not about the outcome. It's about being obedient in this moment. So God, what do you have for me today? And what do I need to say yes to or no to?
Mhm.
But how can I
Right.
walk in obedience to you today?
Mm. So good, Holly. I mean, I'm motivated. See how inspirational you are? I want to get out there and do that thing that I'm fearful of.
And that's what the
Oh
enemy
my
wants to
gosh.
pause us. He wants to freeze us in fear. And that's what I learned. Like
Yeah.
that's all anxiety and panic. And we live in a society right now, wherever you stand on your political beliefs, it doesn't matter. We as a society, fear is polarizing us. And I go, fear, you got nothing on me. Like
Yeah.
you can't.
Right.
It doesn't matter. The enemy can accuse me of anything. Anybody can say anything they want about me. It doesn't matter, true or untrue. God, I'm going to stand before you. I just want to be obedient to you, because we have a world that needs us, that not necessarily needs us, but needs Christ. And the world needs us to be obedient to him, because there are people who are so polarized by fear and anxiety and depression and all the things that are going on. They need hope.
Right. Yeah.
And Christ is the hope. We are just the messenger.
That's right. I can sit here and listen to you all day here, girl. I mean, this is just phenomenal,
Praise
just
God.
encouragement, and I love how God all those things he took you through and how it built up your faith, and that's exactly, how he works. Like, if I could get through that, then I can do this, just like you're
Mhm.
saying, like rap, no problem. Writing a
Yeah, that's
book,
easy.
okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like we want to get to that point of where it's like a given yes, there's no fear, just pure faith. And I know now in churches have grief support.
Mhm.
Are you feeling God has put you in a place to be a support to others in your local church or in your community who have gone through
Yes.
loss?
Yes, absolutely. And it's because you see people, and I'm a life coach and counselor. So, I have people reach out to me, but my heart is for the women who are struggling in the dark.
Yeah.
Because how many people are walking around with these smiles on their faces, and they're, basically with their Instagram reality, or, their Instagram highlights versus the
Really
reality. And
real.
they're trying to show up in life with their highlights. And I'm like, listen, here's my reality. I've got a cute sweater on the top and I'm wearing tie-dye sweatpants at the bottom that don't match. And, I'm just going to show you this is what, because there's nothing that goes on. We're not going to find healing in the dark. And so for me, my heart hurts for anybody that's in pain, but especially for those who, whether they're in leadership positions, business owners, for whatever reason, well-known names, they don't have the safe place to heal, to be able to say, this is what I'm going through publicly. And I think as we go through and see so many leaders who are hurting and going through so many different things, and it hits the news, I'm like, man, I wish they had somebody to be there. And I'm, 23 years ago, I was at a church with 60 people and in leadership, and felt the pressure to be that way. I can't imagine the pressures that people feel now,
Yeah.
with all of the social media and all of that. And so, being able to support those who have like this, I guess, public persona, um, that's where my heart really is for those that feel like they don't have that safe space. And I love to be able to provide that safe space for them, because it's desperately needed. And I think, I needed that so bad, and I'm, praise God, now that I'm in a position that I'm able to provide that for others.
Yeah. So good and so well needed for sure. Well, as we wrap it up, no pun intended, would you
Love
love to
that.
leave us a takeaway for us, and then go ahead and share with the listener where they can connect with you, your counselor, life coach? I could see why you're even building me up as we speak
Mhm.
here.
Praise
So,
God.
thank you.
Praise God. I just want to encourage you that whatever it is that you're facing today, it might feel like a roadblock, but it's actually a building block. The enemy wants to give you a frontal view, but when we pull back and we take a spiritual view and we look from above, it's the issue is actually much smaller, and you get a different angle. And so sometimes it's like that obstacle, whatever it is right there in front of our face. And it's just like the enemy makes it look so big that we can't get around it or over it or under it. But if we pull back and we ask for God to show us his perspective, then all of a sudden we pull back, and it's almost like being in an airplane, and seeing houses to where these huge houses are like tiny little dots.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like
Yeah.
a lake is like a little tiny dot on a piece of paper. All of a sudden, you have this aerial view and you go, wow, that's not near as big as what I thought it was. Because you're looking at it from the spiritual perspective of what God can do and how much bigger God is in it. So as you face things in your life and those quote unquote stumbling blocks or roadblocks, remember those are simply building blocks that God wants to use to strengthen you, to build your spiritual muscles so that you can help pull other people along when the time comes. And
Yeah.
instead of asking, why me? Maybe ask, what now? Or God, what do you want me to learn from this? And like control is a false sense of security.
Yeah.
We
For
really have
sure.
no control over anything, but yet we go, okay, I feel like if I take control over everything, all of a sudden, like I feel like I have control when the reality is we lose, it drives us even crazier, right?
Yeah, well,
To sub-
I just did a podcast the other day and I was like, "Oh, the 3 controls are words, our thoughts, words, and actions. Those are the 3 things we can't control how we
yes,
respond, right?" Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yes.
But it's like we think we can control all these other things that we really can't.
No.
So
No,
at
we
the end of
can't.
the
Yeah.
day, I go, okay, this is what I can control, and I'm going to control the things that I can. Everything else, Lord, I'm submitting it to you. And I feel like when we put the pressure on ourselves to perform, and when I say perform, I mean just do whatever it is that we do, right? Whatever our calling is, when we put that pressure on ourselves, the outcome is up to us. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to be so focused on the outcome, I'm going to miss the obedience and miss the lessons in all of it. And so stay focused in on God and being obedient to him and what he's calling to you in this very moment, because at the end of the day, the outcome's up to him anyway.
Right. That's right.
And so I just want to encourage each one of you to just continue to exercise your faith, in taking those steps of obedience. And sometimes, and you know what, no matter what, when you're obedient to him, that's getting you through that block and creating that spiritual muscle. And so my big takeaway is, you know what, just take one step at a time, one step of obedience at a time, and let him take care of the rest.
Mm, so good. I love that. Okay, where can we connect with you? Because I'm sure a lot are going to want to connect after
Okay.
hearing your story.
Thank you. On Instagram, I hang out mostly on Instagram. I do have Facebook, of course, and I'm getting on TikTok. Um, but Instagram is
Yeah,
where
I can't miss
I
that platform.
I mainly
Like your
hang out.
rap. Yeah.
Um, and then I do. I'm on YouTube, and I have a website, hollymutlu.com. So, but Instagram is where you can DM me, get direct access, and I definitely hang out in my DMs because I love to connect with people.
Yeah, I'm happy we connected.
I know.
And I'm just honored that you are on here to share this journey with us. As hard as it was, we can see on the other side with you the beauty out of it, and you will be reunited with Mia, and
Yes.
that's the hope,
Yes.
and that's the glorious part of all of this. So,
Absolutely. And I will say one other thing in closing is just the things that we go through are never wasted.
yes,
And
amen to that.
whatever it is, God always restores and gives us so much greater. If somebody would have told me as I was standing over Mia's grave that I was going to end up doing the things that I was doing because of that situation, like I would have never believed it. Never. And the impact that something is that, especially something that the deeper it cuts, the deeper the healing, the greater the impact. And so you're never too far gone. Whatever it is that you're going through, God wants to use. So go through the process, be honest with him, and get it all out so that you can heal.
I amen to that. I did a podcast recently on that, just pouring your heart over to God and praising Him, even though you don't necessarily feel all that awesome. It
Yes.
definitely works. Eventually, the joy will come and you'll be lifted. So, thank
Yes.
you, Holly, for coming on here.
Thank you, Jayme, for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today. I trust that God has encouraged you through this message. For more information on this ministry and to access free downloads, please visit my website at jaymeelizabeth.com and sign up. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Jayme Elizabeth She Speaks Life. That's Jayme Elizabeth She Speaks Life. Until next time, my friends, I pray God reveals Himself through your own life story.